everybody. I think we'll get started. We've got a lot of people on here who are all going to want to talk, and we don't have that much time. So I'm going to quickly introduce. We're doing a panel here on teaching the next great developers. I have a panel of experts here. We'll let them briefly introduce themselves, and then we will get on with it. So I'm Noel Rappin. I'm at TableXI, senior developer, and to some extent I'll be representing traditional CS education if that ever comes up at any point over the next 40 minutes, which I'm sure nobody would ever bash traditional CS education in this forum. So, okay, first up we got Jeff. We also only have 2 microphones, so you guys are going to pass them around.
Hi, my name is Jeff Kasmer. I run a company called Jumpstart Lab, and most recently started up a training program called Turing, Turing School of Software and Design.
I put labs up there. I got it wrong.
It's all right. I was called Table X.
Hi, I'm Bree Thomas, and I'm a developer with a company called iTriage, and a recent grad of this guy's school.
Hi, my name is Jen Myers, and I am part of the team at Dev Bootcamp here in Chicago.
Jen is filling in at the last minute for Dave Hoover, who couldn't make it due to a family emergency.
I'm Liz Abenante. I am a developer at Instructure, and I also co-lead the Girl Develop It chapter here in Chicago with this gal.
Hi, my name is... Just kidding. Is that ready? Yeah. Okay. My name is Katie Exine. You can call me Katie. I am the co-leader of Girl Develop It Chicago. Started in Girl Develop It with Girl Develop It Columbus with that girl. And I'm currently a software engineer at a company called Fuda, 600 West.
Hi, I'm Ben. I work at Thoughtbot in Boston. I run our program for training developers there called Learn, and I write code and talk to people and do things like this.
So I want to start this off so we have a couple of different kinds of programs here represented. We have 2 different boot camps that are somewhat similar in structure but different in length. We have the Girl Develop It, which is more shorter interventions aimed at bringing novices into the field, and we have somewhat more in-depth online interventions. And I guess maybe what I want to start with is what do you think is the most important part that you in your program bring to teaching a novice developer, and how do you think that fits towards bringing in the next generation of developers? To start with, anybody can feel free to. Jen's got the mic. So what's the most important thing that Dev Bootcamp? Like, if you were to say that a Dev Bootcamp boot came out of there knowing 1 or 2 things, like what's the most important thing that you try to impart?
Honestly, I think the most important thing that we try to foster is just being able to love and learning how to learn. And really being able to carry themselves on. And our goal is to really produce people who know enough about Ruby on Rails to get a job where they can continue to learn, and that they have the tools and the muscles built up that they know how to keep learning on their own and keep exploring and finding out new things. So it's a little bit meta, but I really do feel like that's one of the things that is our main goal, to make sure that people can continue learning for the rest of their careers and lives.
In kind of a similar vein, I would say the most important outcome for students is understanding really how to take difficult technical problems and turn them into sets of small, still difficult, but more manageable technical problems. And we happen to do that with Ruby on Rails, but it's really validating when we see students go into jobs where they do JavaScript full-time or iOS full-time, and they're still able to apply all those same patterns to a different language and framework and so forth.
And Girl Develop It comes from a slightly different perspective because we work with complete novices in a wide range of classes, and we're just now starting to get into programming here in Chicago with our gals. But I think the most important thing that I've found teaching these students is how to ask questions and where to ask them. Who to ask, what kind of responses are good responses, and what kind of responses are terrible, and you should ignore them because they're from terrible people.
So this is actually something that I think that is important for all levels that I'm working on myself, honestly, is a willingness to admit you don't understand something. There's this phenomenon I've seen in developing in particular where, because it's an intellectual-based activity, we have this really strong impulse to always act like we know what's going on and we understand what people are saying. And I've tried really hard to develop in myself the ability to be like, I did not follow that. I don't understand what's going on. And I think more of that is really good for the world. I think I've seen myself do it too, where you sort of fake it. It's like, oh, are you familiar with this? Yeah, I mean, I know I should be, so therefore I'm going to say yes. And that hurts you. Like, you cheat yourself out of that immediate learning, and you cheat, your colleague or the person you're talking to out of being able to trust you when they find out you weren't telling the truth. And there's just all these negative impacts from that.
So, actually, I have a sort of jumble. Do you guys have questions in the audience? Like, I have a couple of prepared questions that are going to be kind of vague, but if you guys have questions in the audience, yes, no, maybe, then this would be I think more fruitful if we come from there.
Everyone thinks they're terrible at programming when they start. How do you help people build confidence?
So the question is, how do you help people build confidence given that everybody thinks they're terrible when they start, or possibly for several years after they've started?
I love that question. You repeated it, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Because I still struggle with believing that I am a good programmer. And I think this happens to everybody, there's this imposter syndrome. And I think everybody has, wow. There we go. Yeah, it's okay.
Going back to the title.
It still kind of blows my mind when people think nice things about me. And I think that imposter syndrome is very prevalent. And again, we're in an intellectual-based field again. So I try to be, humility, I think, is my answer to that. I try to be humble myself because I've had those own feelings of imposter syndrome, of not even believing that I know what I'm doing. And so I know that's just amplified 1,000-fold when you're brand new and everything's super confusing. So when I've done stuff, particularly with really new people, like a Rails Bridge type workshop, I like to open by saying don't worry, the state of being confused and this should work but it doesn't work, that is the normal state of the working programmer. That's how it is. And so it's not you, it's never you, it's that this is hard, and it's always going to be like that. So hopefully you like it.
Despair is what we teach, long-term despair.
I was going to backtrack a little bit on what you were saying. We, as Liz mentioned, we deal with a lot of people who are just starting out. So actually a lot of them they're not faking it in what we're working with. They think they're totally incapable of learning it. On the reverse side. So there's a few things that we do in order to make sure that they feel comfortable is, for one, we make sure to encourage them to ask questions and do not scoff when they ask any sort of question, because then we're validating them and saying that is a totally valid question and it's okay if you don't know that, and we may not even have the answer. So that type of open discussion, being able to ask questions, is great. And then also just providing positive feedback, actually constructive feedback, both positive and even if it's constructive, providing it in a positive way, I think really helps build people's confidence.
That was what I was. Yeah. Giving a setup where you can give somebody a small, quick win that they've done something that they can point to, I think is helpful in my experience as a teacher.
So I'll just add to that. As one who spent 6 months in a course, I wasn't getting it at all for the first 3 months. And it was brutal. And I consider myself someone who's actually, I never had any question about my ability to learn something new. And so I think in terms of what's important from a student perspective when you're in a course is having instructors and an environment where they can adapt to your learning style. So they can understand, they can look at you and they can understand, okay, here's where you're having problems, and change course if that's what's required. Because I can say that was my experience. I kind of went, oh my gosh, I still have no idea what's going on, and we're halfway through the course, and it's not clicking. And I kept getting it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. No, it's not okay. I'm halfway through, and I spent all this money, and there's only 3 months left. And essentially the instructors, at least with Jeff's group, they took a step back and said, okay, let's focus on the fundamentals. And let's do some smaller steps, and let's do that work with you. And that was extraordinarily helpful for me. And by the time I graduated, I can honestly say I finally felt like, oh, I'm a developer now. I may not be, a great one, but I feel comfortable calling myself a developer now.
And in terms of not seeing yourself as terrible, you're not terrible if you do one thing right, in programming. if you get that image to render on your very first HTML page, but you cannot figure out freaking CSS for the life of you, it doesn't matter because you got that one thing, that tiny victory. Reinforcing those tiny victories, celebrating those tiny victories, and using those as moments to break away from the frustrations really helps break students out of that pattern of, I'm terrible, I don't get this, it's really hard.
I think the whole conversation around like imposter syndrome I found really interesting. I kind of want to ban that phrase. Like I will probably stop saying it because I think it's just a part of programming, thinking or perhaps knowing that you're not good at programming. And for me, when I first started, our first program was Hungry Academy in DC. And when I laid out the course plan, there were pieces in there that I did not know how to do and had never done in a project. And I was so nervous, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna be exposed, right?" But I had this co-teacher, and I was like, "He'll know. He's a real consultant, and like he knows how to do these things. It'll be okay." And I think what's happened to me over that time is just realizing that like I don't give a shit. Like if I'm not the best programmer, I'm sure Ben's a much better programmer than I. So what? Like. It probably, you know, and so I'm fortunate, you know, through things like RailsConf to talk with amazing people, and people are like, oh, you know, Jose Valim, like building Elixir, like no idea, I can't even understand Elixir, much less how to build it, and he's a much better developer, much better programmer than I am, but who cares? Is really, I think, something that's valuable to your career, like.
One thing
you're not measured on some like benchmark against other. There's no like programming tests like program this thing in 37 minutes. Oh, Jen can do it in 36 minutes. She's smarter than you. Like it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant.
I did it in 35, but that's okay.
It's that CS degree. I got you 1 minute.
One thing that I think is really important is try to keep novices from comparing themselves against like the quote unquote heroes. Like it's really easy for somebody to say. Like, oh, I see Steve Klobnik submit, you know, I see these people who submit to open source all day long. And a lot of the people who do that, that's actually one way or another their job. And to compare their output, their very public, very voluminous output to yours when it's not really your job to do that is unfair to yourself and a little bit unfair to them, but mostly unfair to yourself. And to try, I've seen like novice developers get kind of locked in that idea that they're not doing everything they could be doing. And that's dangerous for them. Like, you want them to be celebrating the victories that they are doing and not comparing themselves with the things that they're not. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so that brings to mind for me is, Jeff, the last panel you read, one of the concerns that was brought up was this idea that maybe we're producing a lot of developers who are perhaps going to even do some harm in their first few gigs, perhaps.
All of us do a lot of harm in our first few gigs, right? Like,
So, yes.
So this question's from all of you. I wonder if teaching the next great developers is even the right question to be asked. And if that is, then what qualifies?
So the question is whether teaching the next great developers is the right question, and if so, it is. The great developers was my fault. Don't blame them for calling this great developers.
That's link bait,
Yeah.
and you're here.
If I had only said, yeah, right. If I had only said good developers, half of you would be off learning.
See ya.
I
the
think
next
one of
adequate
the
developers.
privileges of working with these programs and people that come into our program and programs like all these people participate in is that they might not be great developers. And like Bree wants to be a full-time developer. In 10 years, will Bree be a full-time developer? I'm not so sure. But will she be doing something amazing in technology and like probably running a company? Will I be working for her? Like above zero chance, you know? Like, and so the people that I guess one of the things that surprises people about our program, and I think it's probably similar for Dev Bootcamp, is most of our students are career changers. It's not their first career. And so they've got these years of experience about how to be a professional. They've got years of experience in some domain, whether it's finance or health or restaurants or whatever it is. And that experience is going to be amazing for what they do next after their first couple jobs, right? Noel and I, we have these CS degrees. We're like one day going to get thrown out of a Ruby conference, like marked and thrown out. But those people, I'm excited to see, like, yes, they're going to really mess up some projects in the short term, but what they do when they get to the point of leading teams and starting companies, I think is what's going to be really cool.
I think that the question really is, what does great mean? And my definition of it is similar to what Jeff was describing, is that people who bring a really great diversity of experience and backgrounds and to kind of enrich the products that we're making. That's exciting, and he's right. In Dev Bootcamp, we do have a lot of people who have really unique backgrounds and have some really cool perspectives that they bring into things, and are just like great people. And those are people you want to work with on teams, and they just help you make better things together. So that I'd like to have that definition of great, and kind of tease out the potential in those people who have other things that they can bring to it, and help them contribute that for making the developers they are.
I really like both those answers, because I think one of the best things about programming is that it's an awesome force multiplier on something else that you want to do. So rather than being like, I want to be really amazing at writing code, if you can say, I want to change lives in this way or make this sort of thing, and programming is the superpower that lets you do it harder and faster, I think that's like the best way to think about that. I have a friend who has just enough programming background that he works at a bank with a bunch of finance people, and everyone he works with, basically they massage Excel spreadsheets all day. And he has just enough programming background to write VB to do some of this massaging automatically. And he is, the one-eyed man in the land of the blind. Like he's revered, and people are blown away because he can do these things. And I think that's like the perfect way to rather say, I'm going to be amazing at code for code's sake. If you think, I'm going to get good at using code as this amplifier, as a tool for the other things I want to do.
What they used to say about journalism school is, don't do journalism school as an undergraduate. Learn something and then learn how to apply journalism to it. I think programming is very similar. Like, learn how to do something and then learn how to apply programming to it. One thing I have seen from both I've met a number of Dev Bootcamp and G School Jumpstart graduates, and they do seem very enthusiastic as a group, as people who have chosen something and gone through and succeeded in this challenging program. They tend to come out being very enthusiastic.
You have to.
Yeah.
When you spend 80 to 90 hours a week.
So the question is, how do we make sure that the next generation of developers has the interpersonal skills to be leaders and mentors within the community?
I don't know if you've noticed this about me. I'm kind of a perky person. I'm kind of, friendly. I hug a lot. When I introduce myself at Girl Develop It classes, I always say, I wasn't doing this a year ago. I don't get to say that anymore because it's now been a year. I'm so proud of myself. But I tell them, when I tell them my story, I say, I made this career transition. I went to Dev Bootcamp. I made this choice, and I would not have been able to do this without the assistance of my mentors, of my friends, of the teachers at Dev Bootcamp, who Jen talked me down from a ledge a couple times. It was not easy. It was really difficult, and I preach that to them, and I tell them, I'm here for you. Katie's here for you. We have meetups. We're your friends. We're your mentors. We are here. You should be here for the people that you need help with. And we encourage them to help each other during class. So it's not just something we say, do this maybe, in a year or a month or however long, X days until you become a developer. It's do this right now. Do this in class. Help this person next to you when they're struggling.
And at Dev Bootcamp, we actually kind of take it a bit further and formalize it. So we actually have a portion of our curriculum that's called Engineering Empathy. The students all go through guided sessions in feedback and communication and understanding themselves as kind of touchy-feely as that sounds. The goal is exactly what you described, is to get people to know how to communicate better, know themselves better, have better team dynamics, and just be well-rounded individuals that know how to connect with other people, whether it's on their teams or clients or customers, any of those sort of things that you need to be able to build really good software. We formalize that. We have sessions for it, and then we try to put a support structure around it, like Liz described, of all of us being on board, and all the instructors are there to kind of reinforce it as they go all the way through the program.
I would just add to that, specifically to your question about how do we foster this, I would say that I am a very extroverted person, and aside from that, I think it's really important when you work with new developers, be in their business. Don't let them, okay, yeah, I got this. I'm just going to go work over here on this thing, or I'm going to do a couple hours of code school till you give me a task to do. Because I think as new developers, no matter how extroverted we are, or there is still a little bit that fear of, oh gosh, we're going to break production. Oh shit. or whatever it is. Or, maybe we're too nervous to ask questions because you guys look really busy doing the real work. So I just think it's important, at least for me. I mean, I like it when mentors and people that I look up to they're like in my business. They're like, okay, what are you doing? Let's talk about that. Let me shoulder hawk you for a few. Let's pair program. I think all of that is really important in fostering new developers.
Anybody in the room been a mentor for a program like one of ours? So, number one, I want to give you tremendous shout-outs that those relationships are incredibly valuable for our students. People like Sean had a mentee in our program, and like Sean changed that young man's life, like without a doubt. So, tremendous shout-outs. Fostering the interpersonal communication, I think, is the most valuable piece we can add, right? Like the code you can get from a book and how to work with a team and how a team goes wrong and right, you only get through experience. And so that's like with our program, we're fortunate to have a very long time. And so they work primarily in 3-week projects with groups of 4 people. And you learn all the hard lessons of hopefully some of those first projects that you would otherwise screw up for money. You screw up on your own time and your own money. You see the team that has all the all-stars and they go into with all the confidence and they're like, yeah, we've been doing this Rails thing for 6 weeks. We're going to build a backbone front end. Like, yeah, don't do it. And they're like, no, we're going to do it. Okay, and then it all burns down, right? Or you see the team that is honestly kind of mediocre with their skills, but they get along and they pair well together and they communicate well, and then they end up delivering better software than the all-star team, and the all-star team is like, hey, wait a second, like, we should talk to each other and like figure stuff out. This works better. And just getting to iterate on those problems and learn them yourself, not just like hear it in a conference talk and try and follow through. We do little things like lightning talks. I know you guys do lightning talks also. So I like to think that has led to like Bree's giving a talk tomorrow. I know a couple of your grads are giving talks and so forth.
Sorry, next, Ashish, and then go ahead. So the question is does it scare us that we're bringing in a bunch of people into an industry that's horrible at onboarding people?
I heard there's a talk about crafting your own onboarding experience that's really phenomenal.
I mean, it's a little scary, especially as somebody who has been an instructor. You really care a lot about those students, and they go out into the world, and it's a little bit like, yeah, you're sending your kid off to school or something like that, and you don't know what's going to happen. But I'm not really sure how to solve that problem other than just attack it. And so I think that if we can bring people or produce people that do know how to own their own learning and know how to communicate well, then those are some of the best weapons we have to improve the overall process for other people coming in. And hopefully we can also, those of us who know some of these challenges can provide more structure. And we have a placements team who works with companies to hire our grads and things like that. So we can build a structure that maybe can help provide more resources or help for the companies that are taking our grads and just make it smoother for everybody. And hopefully the more we do that, the better it gets.
I'm sort of the opposite of scared of bringing more people in. I think we desperately need to do it. Right now, at least from what I see, demand is so much higher than supply. And that works out pretty well for us as developers that already know what we're doing, right? Because we're very much in demand. The power is on our side right now. But if that demand and supply are mismatched for too long, the demand will drop. And it'll have to drop. And I know someone who is a CTO for hire, and so he works with a lot of companies, and he had a startup that just got funded and was like, okay, now we're ready, let's go hire a Rails developer, and they couldn't. They couldn't find somebody. They said, okay, let's not write it in Rails, we're going to go somewhere else. So if we have this mismatch for too long, I think it will be bad for us. And so I think if we've got this crazy, giant demand up top, we've got to satisfy it. It'll be better in the long run.
Speaking on the side of this as somebody who onboards novices, I think that, this is a problem that to some extent is outside of all of their control, right? As Jen was alluding to. What we need to do on the incoming side is understand that in some cases understand where these students are coming from, the experiences that they have had and the experiences they haven't had, and ideally put them in a situation where they can be successful and where we're matching them to expectations that are reasonable. I think a lot of the students, I think that you guys would agree that there are better situations for your students to go to and worse situations for your students to go to, and you want them to go to a place where there are going to be other people. You don't want them to go to a place where they're going to be the entire straw holding up, the one straw holding up this huge weight of stuff. You want them to go to a place where there are going to be more senior people who can put them in a situation where they're going to be successful. And I do think we have to get better at doing that generally. Creating senior developers is a whole different ball of wax. Jeff, did you have a point you wanted to make?
As far as companies that do and do not have apprenticeships, I think of it really as evolution. Like, there are so many companies that sit around waiting to hire a senior engineer and look for 6 months and don't find any and all that. And meanwhile, the company who brought in apprentices, they now have 6 months experience and they're delivering probably like somebody with 2 years experience if they're doing it well. And the reality is, if your company does, in my opinion, does not work on bringing in young people, young in their career, you're going to die. Like, you're just going to lose, because the teams that build up their own people keep those people. Those people are tremendously valuable 6 months, a year, 18 months in, and they'll just beat you.
Dave Hoover had a theory at Optiva that the goal of a small company was to have people at every level. You have the best novices, you have the best immediate juniors, you have the best people right up that. You don't just have a bunch of seniors and a bunch of novices. You have people, to the extent that you can, you have people at every step in between. And what's great about that is everybody has somebody who's about 6 months ahead of them to point what their next 6 months are going to be like, and everybody has somebody who's 6 months behind them that they're an obvious and immediate partner for. So if you can build up a business like that, if you can build up a team like that, that's fantastic.
We've embraced that like crazy, like bringing in apprentice-level people. We have an apprentice program, and it's been huge for us. We've been able to hire so many more awesome people than we would have if we had just said, we're looking for senior only. We're not willing to invest in these people and train them a bit.
Okay, sorry. So the question is, how do we get the people coming in to set reasonable goals for what they can accomplish technically?
I'll start. Well, after being a student of this gentleman, he's actually, I would say, over the 6 months that I was in school to that point, he was actually really good in that learning time about oh, you think you can do this thing? Go ahead, knock yourself out, right? So much like with children, I have a 7-year-old. It's kind of like you're in charge of your own fun. You learn a lot by being crushed by some of those, oh, this was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. So I think there's something important about that. In terms of at the workplace, at least where I work, they're very good about, and they have a focus on kind of onboarding, right? And so they're very good about, hey, we're going to help define these goals with you. We're going to help ease you into the code base. And we're going to do that with smaller sets of problems to solve. And we're not going to place this burden on you for get this feature done by this exact time. And so I think all of that is really, really helpful. And the other thing that I think is really helpful, and is a little bit back to what we were talking about just a second ago, is in terms of students, even in being novices, there's different levels of that, and people are different. And so I think that the programs that do exist right now, Dev Bootcamp and the other ones, I think one thing that's really important and that was beneficial for me especially was as I went through the interview process, my instructors were there with me through the whole thing. And they were really, really honest with me, as well as having conversations with employers about my ability. And so that helped, that honesty about where I'm at in my learning and the type of learner that I am and the things that I'm interested in is beneficial so that I don't find myself in a workplace where, that's all I'm going to be is sort of buried under these goals or things that I can't, where I can't really prosper.
On that note, it's also important to teach people to reassess their goals and to be able to take note of where they are and where they expect it to be and maybe think about why they're not there. I think that's also a very important piece.
Yeah, I just want to I like really both of those, and I like what you were saying too. Maybe it's a parent thing. I have an 8-year-old, and I feel the same way where I feel very strongly it's important for people to be able to make mistakes. And be able to learn from them. And I don't think it's so much about preventing them from, trying to scale back the goals to prevent them from making any mistakes, but creating an environment where it's safe to do that and then helping them figuring out what they can learn from it when they do that. So that's kind of in general the philosophy that I like to ascribe to it. I think Dev Boot Camp is in a little bit of a different situation where we don't have people as long as some of the other schools. We only have people for 9 weeks. So we don't have as much time to do that. But I think we do that in general, and then also the way we structure the program starts with the basic building blocks and then builds on top of them. We're a Ruby on Rails training program, but you don't even get to Rails until your 7th week of the program. So we're teaching you the fundamentals before then. So I think that if you start out with the basic blocks and build up from there, and also at the same time kind of create this environment where it's okay to screw things up, and somebody's going to help you figure out how to learn from that, as the two things together make it a lot easier to understand what you can achieve and how to do it.
Yeah.
No, hold on, man. Hold on.
Huh? Oh, Jeff, I'm sorry. You can have your question after Jeff says something.
So TDD, I heard, is over.
Dead.
But we teach it anyway, so we're old-fashioned.
Not just over, dead.
It's dead. Well, we're old-fashioned, and so we teach TDD, and it starts on day 2. And I think that the approach behind TDD is the same approach behind Lean Startup, and like breaking off incredibly small problems, getting feedback right away, and iterating on that. And so by starting with TDD as the means to build software, and then we try through these 3-week projects that work on in their teams, really take like a lean approach to delivering it early, adding on incremental features. Well, first we let them try and build all the features and deliver it day of, and it all burns down. We're like, see, that sucks. Don't do that again. But like by starting with the tests and then applying that to the product, I think it teaches you how to take an idea and figure out what is the essential component here. Like whether it's an aspiration for a company I'm going to build or just a goal for I'm going to learn something, like it's critically important to figure out like what's the first step. And I think that's the hardest part of any good idea.
Okay, now you can ask your question.
So I'm very involved in the interview process and do a lot of like coaching with the students and so forth. And your technical interviews are a hot mess. Like people have cargo culted their process from like 2 companies ago, and you'll see sometimes it makes absolutely no sense. There's a company that'll put like students through 6 rounds of interviews and then say no. And I'm like, do you understand how much of your own time you've wasted here? Like, it's insane. Specifically with the technical questions, you'll see such a broad range. People will be like, I have an array. How do I pull out an element? And it's like, really? Come on. And then there's others. We did have a student get asked, like, are you familiar with binary trees? And he said, like, yeah, I've built a binary tree. And they're like, do you know, like, the lookup efficiency of it? And he's like, oh, you mean like n log n? And it's like, boom, bomb dropped on you. Like, you didn't see that coming from somebody who's been doing it for 6 months, right? The reality is that code, like everyone, I guess not everyone, you should agree that coding on a whiteboard is dumb, right? I tell the students, like if somebody asks you to code on a whiteboard, tell them, how do I run the tests? And like, question over. But the piece about like, how do they learn, how do they solve problems, that is incredibly valuable. So yeah, I think we need to have a lot more conversation around how, as teams and companies, do we want to build up interview processes that actually achieve the goals and like find the people that we want. Because from what I've seen, there's no understanding. There's kind of like fear and uncertainty about it. We had a student this time get asked to sign an NDA about the interview process. It's not that interesting, bros. Like whatever it is, it's not that interesting. So I think there's a lot of work to be done there.
I can just talk on a personal level of I had a really, well, I don't want to say I had a bad technical interview, but I want to speak to the good technical interview that I had at the current company that I'm with, and part of the reason why I chose to go to that company is because of the technical interview. And the interview I had was a take-home assignment, and this is one of the different formats you can do. I had a take-home assignment for 3 days to build an API. It was my first API, and it was just an amazing experience in that not only did I get to learn something as part of the interview, I got to see how accessible my manager would be. And then he was also able to judge how did I attack something that I didn't know, and also what kind of questions did I ask. And I think we each got a really good understanding of what this type of a relationship would be like. So that's just personal experience.
So the process that we do, I think, is actually pretty good. So we do have a technical screen, which is sort of a discussion of how might you build this, how might you build that. But the real meat of the interview is in-person pairing in the office. A full day, and you work on real stuff, real client work, real open source work, whatever people would actually normally be doing, and you sit next to somebody. And I like that a lot. You can run the tests. It's not a fake, contrived problem. You can see also what it's like to sit next to somebody. And it's because there's that social fit, which is so important too. And so that the whiteboarding thing, I agree, that needs to die for sure. And let's move more towards pairing and seeing what people are actually like on real stuff that you're working on.
I forgot to mention one of my favorite interviews that I ever saw that you reminded me of was ThoughtWorks. Asks you to create a code sample or solve a sample assignment and submit it. You have like a week or something along those lines. And then when you get into the in-person interview, what you do is sit down with an engineer and pair on refactoring your submission to the assignment. And so they get to see a lot of great things there, right? Like, how do you understand the code that you wrote? Did you actually write it? And how do you think about
Minor
refactoring?
detail.
Do you go like, what? It works. Why would I change it? Or do you understand how to restructure, extract objects, extract methods? I thought it was
we
really
do something
awesome.
like that too. It's generally pretty helpful. I think we have time for one more question.
Set his hand up like the whole time.
Okay, so all right, so I will go with you. I hope it's a good question. We're last, so I have no place to go. I have no place to go after this, but they may stop recording us. After dark.
We spend a lot of time getting women familiar with technical concepts and comfortable talking about technical concepts so they can take on more technical roles, not necessarily as an engineer, but perhaps as a product manager instead of doing project management. And that's a subtle difference to us, but it's a huge difference to them. It's a world of difference. It's more technical responsibility. They're more comfortable with their knowledge. And so my goal teaching people is not to get them to be X. It's to get them to whatever their X happiness will be. I love what I do, but that may not be right for them. I want to help them in any way that I can to get to the technical career they want to have that will work for them. And whatever resources I have, I will just waterfall at their face. So.
It's one of the questions I really try and watch out for in students or applicants at that stage is, do you want to be a professional developer? And if the answer is no, please don't come, because this is a tremendous waste of time. Like spending 27 weeks to prepare for a job you don't want makes no sense. And redirect them you're a lot better off going to Dev Bootcamp, and you can come out and you have some programming skills, and you can reappropriate those into a management position, in a project position if you want to. That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I think that sometimes even Dev Bootcamp is a little too intense for that, just because most of the people, it's still hard to quit your job for 9 weeks if you're just kind of doing it to pivot. But it's less intense, or it might be a little bit easier. And we do have people who go through who want to apply it to maybe a certain area that isn't just being a straight-up developer. But I think Liz was talking about things like Girl Develop It and other organizations that are working on really reaching out to people. And there's lots of them, and they have lots of different focuses. But I think that's where they really come into play, is that just opening these doors, and you get to choose where you go after that. You kind of just go, or maybe a door is the wrong word, but more of a gateway. And so you can go in many directions after that. So I think that these are complements. They're not all necessarily the same thing. We kind of have a spectrum of different organizations, and they complement each other really well. The really nice thing about just reaching out and letting people choose where they want to go, maybe they don't know what they want, and they don't know what's out there. I know, as I was growing up, I didn't even have the internet. Being a web application developer didn't even exist. So I had no idea until I was probably in my early 20s that maybe this might exist and maybe I can start working towards it. And there are still, and that was a kind of a time thing for me, but there are many people who don't have access to the kind of opportunities that we do. And so just being able to give them more accessible ways to see what is out there might be able to say, oh, maybe I actually do want to do that. And then they can take one of these other programs.
Yeah, things like Code School and Rails for Zombies and stuff also have a place in that too. You get a certain amount of knowledge, enough knowledge to understand. You have to have enough. There are some positions where all you need to know is you need to know when your technical person is totally bullshitting you, and that's those kinds of things move to that. Go to speak to that. I'm obligated to tell you that we're at time. I don't have any place to go. I don't know about you guys. So if people have questions, I'm willing to, with whoever wants, continue to answer questions. If you guys have places to go, that's fine. But first, just a round of applause for the panel. Thank you guys all for showing up, and thank you for coming.